Right, ladies and gents, good evening. Welcome to quite a few of you, actually. Very oversubscribed, so thanks for actually coming along today. This will be a first in a series of events that we're putting on about future trends in the music industry, and we're delighted to have Benji and Imogen here tonight to talk about blockchain. Benji's going to start off with a presentation and then move into Imogen doing a short piece from an artist's perspective. And without further ado, I shall leave you in Benji's capable hands to start off.
Thanks very much. Just a quick show of hands here. Who is kind of versed in the Bitcoin blockchain? Okay. And who's heard, obviously everyone's heard of the Bitcoin and blockchain, so we wouldn't be here, but I'll just give a quick, kind of 2 seconds on what I think would make it sort of more palatable. When we talk about things like decentralized ledgers and cryptocurrencies, it can get kind of complicated. And I started to get into this about, I'd say a year and a half ago, I started to kind of study it. And the Bitcoin was created by a woman, man, or entity called Satoshi Nakamoto. And it was basically put onto the internet as an open source project to create Bitcoins, which had no value whatsoever at the time. The underlying ledger, what basically lets someone know that one Bitcoin has been sent to someone else, is called the blockchain. And so basically it holds information that says Imogen just sent me a half a Bitcoin. It goes into a block, and then it comes out the other side to me on the other side. And once this block is basically full of transactions, every 10 minutes another block is put on top of it. Another block on top, another block on top. Now the interesting part about that is each copy of this series of transactions is held on multiple computers all over the world. Currently it's about 8 times the power of Google's entire computing processing power is running this system. And there's a $6.2 billion market cap. So it's an extremely large thing that's already happening. And it was invented in 2007, I think it came out. So it's been proven for quite a while this is an impressive technology. It's impressive to me, and what really got me into it first was that once you've put and registered something in a block in the blockchain, it's immutable, can't be changed. You would have to overpower 51% of all the computers running the network in order to basically readdress one of these blocks. But because there's such value attached to each one of these blocks being in the blockchain, it doesn't behoove anyone to alter anything. So basically it's kind of it was designed very cleverly to be a trustless system. As in, it's decentralized, nobody owns it, but it's a data store. And that was the idea that basically got to it. So Bitcoins are arguably worth nothing, or they're worth about $380 each, and that price fluctuates based on markets, much like a regular currency would. And the argument in the Bitcoin and blockchain community is this going to become like a Visa MasterCard type of network, or is it going to become digital gold? Because what you can do is you can create a scarcity, because you can anchor a digital event in time and space, and you take hundreds of thousands of unsecure, unsafe personal computers to create one big, secure one that runs these blocks. So does that make sense on the blockchain side of things? Cool. So then I had this idea in the shower. Basically, the music industry, when we export a song from a studio, we export it into an AIFF, a WAV, or an MP3. And I believe that the music industry should own its own format, which I have called a .blockchain or .bc format, and that we can assign and attach rules to that. So that's what this presentation is basically going to cover. And it's going to do so using the concept of fair trade, virtual reality, and the blockchain. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Stan Coren, which is that in the race to adopt new technologies, the music industry historically has finished just ahead of the Amish. I believe that that's unfair to the Amish in this case. Scott was there. We gave a talk in Barcelona about some of these concepts, and there was about 4 people in the room, so I'm extremely pleased to see this. The Amish were amazing with the use of the technology that they had. They just chose not to upgrade. So they have this fantastic wheel technology that they would put heavy things on and move, and we went, wow, that wheel could be something one day. That's the equivalent of it. So anyway, There's currently no efficient way to track music rights, ownership, or payments globally across our business. And this is a huge problem. Basically, you don't know where to go to figure out who owns what. And there are many, many, many databases all over the world, but they don't all add up and they don't sync, and they're owned by private entities. A global database of rights, ownership, and rules would help or fix a lot of the current problems related to the distribution of payments. I think we could all agree that knowing who to pay and what they need to be paid is kind of key. And then a global database of rights, ownership, and rules has been attempted and failed. It's been attempted multiple times, and it basically hasn't worked. I believe fundamentally because the technology that could underlie it wasn't there. We don't need one single privately owned, hidden away, scrolled away database. We need a public, open database that anyone can get to. A blockchain distributed ledger, which is again that kind of distributed system, seems like a great place to build a global database of rights, ownership, and rules. But getting all those songs into a traditional database, let alone a blockchain one, is very hard to do. And back catalog challenges and fractured ownership are going to be one of the main problems here. Who owns the song that came out in 1975? We don't have the accurate publishing split on it. We don't have it. The correct information. We don't know who to contact about it. We have to send a letter to figure out which person in the estate owns it. It's a mess, as everyone knows. And then lastly, who would do it? Who would actually create this thing? Who's going to sit there and invest money, time, effort to create a global central database of rights, let alone a globally decentralized database of rights? So, and please, if you've got questions, or I'm going too quickly because I've had way too much coffee and I'm jet lagged. The concept of this fair trade music format. One of the things that really struck me here is that as an industry, because we don't control the format in which our music goes out on, it goes out as waves and MP3s, and this is what Imogen you've done so well with your platform, is we don't have a way to express what is fair and what is unfair. We have to basically police it after it's happened. So because we're not set, we say to the industry, we don't want you to use this music or in certain ways, but we're going to give you a format that basically can be used in any way, shape or form. So I think it's going about it backwards. And what I like is that if we can, as an industry, define this set of rules, this set of data that would go into this file is what we would consider to be fair trade. Then we can figure out what is sweatshop versus what is fair trade. So what would a fair trade music database of songs look like? If we were, in hypothetical, going to create a database of rights, what would it look like? So ultimately, it would contain what I've called a minimum viable data set, or an MVD. I don't know why we have to shorten everything, but minimum viable data set. And it could contain something like complete ownership info. Right now, if the average person is sent an MP3, I can take it and alter anything in it, including ownership info. I can take a Beyonce song and say I own it, and I can upload it to YouTube, and YouTube's probably not going to find it. And people get around this all the time. It could contain an ISRC, hopefully an ISWC, but if you don't have that information, we've got to figure out a way around that. ISNI, publishing information, mechanical rights information, performer information, global licensing rules, usage rights, lyrics images, payment information. So and contact information, most importantly I believe contact information, because at least then, if there's one place to go and find something or dispute something, you can go to a place that actually has the person's information to contact them. And right now in iTunes, I can't do that, which seems crazy to me. Hang on a minute. So, what I'm proposing here is a new format. And basically the existing formats were, we had vinyl, tape, VHS, CD, MP3 wave, ACC, MOV, DVD, vinyl again. Then we had Blu-ray, and what's coming is virtual reality and augmented reality have no standardized format or codec, nor does 360 video, which is Facebook's big thing. So virtual reality, I'm sure everyone's seen this has happened. 3.2 million Google Cardboard sets were sold. Oculus Rift, which is a Facebook-owned company, just invested a huge amount of money into their new experiences. And this is something that VR has been around for a long time, but it's now at the point of what I would consider to be deployment, which is where this is about to go out and scale in a really big way. And there is no standard way in which to express a creator's rights into something secure in VR today. Doesn't exist. So if VR suddenly gets a killer app or killer game that scales hundreds of millions of times and has hundreds of millions of usage of songs, they're going to use an MP3 or a WAV with an MOV file, and we won't know where it is or where it's going, and then we're going to have to go, again, retroactively go back and try and fix the problem. And I think that this is where the opportunity lies in VR and AR. The VR and AR opportunity is estimated to reach $150 billion in revenue by 2020. And this is one of the most heavily invested in sectors of the kind of creative space of economy. It's the largest deployment of a new format, I would say, since DVD or Blu-ray. I think it's actually going to dwarf even those in size. I think it's going to become like the book. There will literally just be, this will be how it works. It'll feel strange to adopt that, but I think it's coming at this point. Currently there's a lack of content. And I'll discuss this in depth, but I was with a VR company in Los Angeles recently, and they wanted to use a song in their VR. So they went to approach the legal way, and we want to get licensed for this. And they were told that they had to write a letter to the performer's estate to get permission. By the time they had done so and waited for a reply, they'd rendered and it was done. So they just used something. And that's got to stop. That will happen at scale, and we won't be able to stop it if we don't do that. And again, if this is going to be the new format, people are going to start to drive content towards it, and that's key. New music content licenses will be required. So, and there's no standard format or codec. So again, there's got to be a way to license this technology so that we as the music industry are in charge of how it gets to them. If we just let what goes out right now, it's our fault, quite frankly. If we don't kind of say, hang on a minute, let's put the brakes on, let's actually push out what we would like to have, I think that that'd be an amazing opportunity. So I proposed it as a .bc or .blockchain codec, and it would be a new standard aimed at virtual reality and augmented reality. And I know that that's a future-proof thing, but this is going to solve a major problem that I think we have in the music industry right now if we start at this point. All content would be encoded into a .blockchain codec, and it would contain this minimum viable data set. So Imogen's in the studio, different for you. An artist is in the studio. They go to export their song from the studio, and they would have to enter in a certain amount of rights. They would go export as MP3, WAV, FLAC, .bc. And when they do that, it would have to contain that minimum viable data set. So they would upload a certain amount of information that the industry would decide fits into that minimum viable data set. Minimum viable data set and content would then be anchored into the blockchain in order to be broadcast ready. So we'd have a unique hash that says, right, this file exists. Oh, I'm getting a phone call now. I'm declining that one. Sorry about that. That's weird. Minimum viable data is anchored into the blockchain. So basically what that means is anyone can now go and search to figure out what they can do with that file. If a file is identified that does not have that minimum viable data set in it, there's a problem. So we just need to identify what that would be. VR and other players would only be able to play .blockchain authored files. What I would love is that the industry agrees to a standard which goes into these files, and then you would basically say to the VR, AR, YouTubes, etc., you have until 2017 to become .blockchain compliant, which means all of the files that you process inwards and all the files that you use will be unified against this data standard that we, the industry, have decided. So it's on us to come up with what those rules are, and then them to use and obey those rules using their machines in the way that they would do it. VR and other players would sync to the blockchain to assess usage and possibilities. So if you're using Spotify or a streaming service and you go offline for too long, it requires you to resync to the network. Same principle here. The difference being that you can tell from the player level, again, VR, you toggle up here or in your hands, but you would sync at the player level, literally saying, can I use this song, how many times, done? And then basically as the network is required, and we would set up a rule for how many times a day, week, month this would have to happen. And content or music separated from .blockchain codec not playable. This is the key. The key would be that the industry would say to the digital service providers and the content distributors, if you accept MP3s or waves that do not have this information in it, then you are going into the sweatshop realm, and we don't want to deal with you, because what you're doing is you're saying, we don't want to have the data on who to pay and what this can be used for. We want it to be lawless. We want it to be without rules. Versus, so I believe that what will happen is if we get this right, in a couple of years, the literal operating system of the phone, VR player, stereo, etc. will sit there and say, I cannot accept a format that doesn't have its data attached to it. That's the goal in my head. So this is a quick diagram of how I would view it working. So basically, music and video data, the content comes in at source. The metadata, visual rights, audio rights, publishing, mechanicals, etc., region rights, play counts, are authored into a smart contract. Smart contracts are amazing because on the Bitcoin blockchain and on other blockchains that are available, which we'll talk about in a minute, because you're anchoring something that's immutable, you can set rules into what that specific data set can do. So you can say this song can be used in this way once this happens, and you can basically solve outcomes through at the data level itself. So a smart contract is a way of one machine saying, can I use this? Yes, I can, boom, go. And then basically once that's been authored in, it's all compiled into this .bc, and then that is published to the blockchain ledger. Now I've put the horrible word, or the beautiful, whatever you like, DRM. What's been stunning is since I published this article, the main criticism I've had is that they say you're creating DRM, digital rights management, like that's a dirty word. Why is it a dirty word? That you would as an artist be able to manage your rights. Why is that a horrible word? So what I'm terming it now is digital rights expression. Because what you're doing is you're saying these are the thousands of possibilities you have, these are the 4 we don't want. And that's how I want us to view this. Again, Spotify will still work at the same level Spotify chooses to. That's absolutely fine. But the key is if you want to use my beautiful ballad in a porno, I've said no to that. If I find it there, I can tell you to take it down because I said no. Versus, well, we didn't know. Didn't say anywhere that we couldn't use it. There's nowhere written down that says, don't use my song for this, etc. So I'm quite for DRE, digital rights expression, but DRM is another matter. And then basically all of this is pushed into this codec, and that codec is delivered to the digital service providers. Now that's not actually how it would work, but I'm just using that for the simplicity side of it. Okay. Now, on the decoding side, basically, when content play is attempted, the player references the .bc codec rules. So they'll basically sit there and say, the player says, what can I do? I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, yes, I'm good. And that would be the same thing if you're uploading content at the same time. Then you would basically have the rules authorize or reject content play and query when it should sync to the blockchain the next time. So I think we would set a set of rules in this that would say, anything under 500 or 1,000 plays is okay. Anything over that, we need to look at it. We need to get more information. So again, it's about making this thing something that's workable. And then payment made to smart contract owners, or rights holders as per rules. So again, the owner of the file can choose how to get paid if they want to. Whether that's a major label, an independent label, an artist, a publisher, they can say, this is how we choose to be paid. And because smart contracts allow for the crawling of all this information, then basically you can say, I want to be paid this much at this point, this much at this point, this much at this point. You can also set blanket normal rules. PRS can sit there and say, this is how we want this to be dealt with at this level. Absolutely fine. But at the moment, there's no place to do that. So that is what we should go and fix. So basically, the .blockchain is a fair trade music format, and this is the key here. Each .blockchain file created builds and then adds to a global decentralized database of rights. Because the data set at its core is unified. So just by saying song finished, export into .blockchain, you are creating a database. So every time a song is created, I was with, I think it was Omniphone, they said they got 48 million files, 48 million musical files sitting there in that database. That's a phenomenal amount. That's the recorded works from the history right the way forward. There'll be 70 million, it's estimated, authored in the next 10 to 15 years. We're going to double the amount from beginning of time to now in the next 10 to 15 years. So this is a huge problem to solve. And if we encode a file with its rights, just that bare minimum set, then everything going forward becomes matchable, sustainable, global, accessible. And again, we can alter those. I view that VR and AR are the Trojan horse to get older songs and catalog into the new format at the point of access or the point of usage. What I mean there is that if these VR companies are so well kind of poised to punch in, the next YouTube of VR, the next HBO of VR, the next Netflix of VR, whatever that is, or the next killer game, they're going to want to move at speed. And the existing system is going to slow them down. So this is why if we serve them what can be used, they can come in without having to go through a lot of the pain of trying to figure out who owns what where. They can just go in, use, move on, and pay. And you can track every inch. That's the beautiful part of this. So new and existing rights expressed into the codec at point of creation. Rights holders set rules into these smart contracts. Smart contracts become part of the minimum viable data set. So you would basically say, I'm authoring this song. This is what the basic things I'd like to be done with it. It can be used for YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, etc. Just can't be used here. So again, it's that thought of expressing your rights as you encode versus sending the song to someone and then compiling the rights on it later on, which then can be stripped away. So hopefully it's inclusive of everybody. So to sum it up, the Fair Trade Music format, or .bc, auto-creates a global, decentralized database of rights every time a song is encoded. That's the plan.
That's great. That's really good to hear it from the horse's mouth. I've read your pieces online, and it's just very exciting. So hello, I'm Imogen. I see lots of familiar faces in the crowd. So why am I here? Well, basically, I'm a musician, as you may know, and I've recently just put out a song called Tiny Human, and I'm currently out of publishing and out of record deal and management deal, actually. So for the first time, I'm kind of floating, and I can do whatever I want. So I had a thought, okay, well, if I could do whatever I want, what would I like to happen in this industry? And I thought one thing which I'd really, really love to do was to be able to receive monies directly when a piece of music is played, and not, sometimes take 2 or 3 years of very complicated payment system to finally get back to me. So that was one thing I wanted to do. Another thing I wanted to do was to be able to share all the information that, some of which Benji's been talking about, to enable developers, people who are building platforms using blockchain technology or outside of blockchain technology, just basically people developing music platforms, to go, here's some stuff as an artist that I'd love to share. So it's anything from who wrote the song, who produced it, who played the instruments, what the song's about, how long is the song, what key is it in, what tempo is it in, what time signature, what key signature. Might want to say whereabouts I wrote it, what were the brands of instruments that I used, what type of coffee was I drinking, what was I wearing. All of this stuff I could put attached to this song as stuff that could be shared and used in some way for people to, and lyrics obviously, to be able to get into the song, and not just have the song with a play button and that's it, but you'd have the cover art, you'd have the video, you'd have all the people involved. You could even you could create a platform where you could look through, like SoundCloud, SoundCloud, where you can see what everyone's saying about it, but you could see that about the actual song, like what was that particular instrument and who owned it before, and where did you buy it from, and is that person, does Shaw know about that? Could they reverse search that information? So basically, as an artist, I just feel like there's so many things that go into making of that music that don't get shared, that I could really, really do with being shared. Because imagine if a brand was like, it'd be really great to just know who on the planet likes Sennheiser headphones, or Sennheiser, and they'd find me. And they would say, Imogen Heap, that's interesting. She's got 2.9 million followers. And okay, she's quite active in technology. Okay, maybe we'll go with her. And we'll ask her if she wants to do our next song. And therefore I can get a nice chunk of money to make a song for them, and we all win. So it's about kind of going, here's a beacon of information, come and get me, and let's do business. Because it's really, really hard to get those kinds of things out there. And imagine what could happen if that was on a massive database that anyone could search, and you could have incredible services like spawn up from that. Like one service I'd really love to happen would be, say all music was being played from this database, or using .bc or a standard, and you could you could basically, anyone playing at that particular moment in the world, as an artist, you could look at it and go, oh, okay, so who's playing my songs at the moment? And you could look up a particular song, so you could look up hide and seek, and you could see, oh wow, this station over here is playing it directly from this kind of database, this station's playing it from over here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to see what the name of that DJ is. And then you can find the name of that DJ, might have contact information, you can call them up directly and go, hey, thanks so much for playing my song, this is what it's about, and you connect directly to your listeners. You really you connect to the real world finally again, because it feels like I'm so kind of detached from my music. It's all out there, but I have no way of knowing who's interacting with it, what they're getting from it, and how can I share, directly with them right then. So this idea of kind of, basically, I call it Mycelia. And this idea of a kind of the goodness, the kind of the creative stuff that the industry is kind of built around exists under here in this nice layer. And then above it are what I call the mushrooms, and these are the services. These are like the Spotify's and the iTunes, and then apart from that you have all the fans at the top. And it's this way of kind of basically enabling those services to use that data under the terms of the artists and the rights owners. So again, what Benji was saying. But the way I was thinking about it, not in a kind of in a code, like in a format type of thing. I was more thinking in a set of standards. Again, kind of like what are these standards? And I feel like we need to set the kind of the ethical, the commercial, and the technological standards of how services can be kind of liberated to use this information for the artist's advantage, for all the people that have been involved. It could be like suddenly you've got a producer can actually get work off the back that he's produced songs, because people can find out who that producer has worked with. You could see, drummers. You might have an app that can kind of look on top of this data and go, okay, we're going to follow the life of a drummer, through his age, and we can play all the songs that he's played. He might be really interested in one particular drummer, and then he can really, help that with his career. It's basically like at the moment the artists, we're kind of like first in, last out. Get first in with our work, here we go, and then right at the end, if we're lucky, a few years down the line, we get some cash back. And then, but the musicians are the same, but they don't even have the advantage of the fact that, they're the featured artist. So they can't, it's just really, really hard for them. It's like much harder for them to make a living. So yeah, it's how do we basically ease it all up? So what I did on this kind of tiny human song, about my little girl, I put it up on my website as a kind of an experiment, and I just said, anyone who is developing new technology, or you can do basically just have the song and show me what tech you have at the moment. I want to see what you can do with this information. So whether they're using blockchain, like there's a company called PledgeMusic, and they took my song data and they put it on encapsulates.com, and as a test, a beta, you can go there now and have a look. And in it, you can see who owns it, you can see the musicians that played, you can see the lyrics, you can hear the music, you can't see the video, you can see the inspiration, you can't see brands, any of that kind of information. But it was really like, that was the kind of, for me, like the best that's out there at the moment for the artist.
Good song.
Yeah. So Ujo's doing really, really great things. And so at the moment, there's like, very small amount of people kind of buying off using Ujo. And they're buying with this currency called Ether, because it's on the Ethereum blockchain, which don't use, there's kind of like two different formats of blockchain. There's kind of proof of stake and proof of work. A lot of people think that the proof of stake thing is kind of a bit difficult because it involves so much computing power and it's quite slow, which is the Bitcoin side of things. But then there's the Ethereum kind of Muse side of things, which uses proof of work, which is kind of very interesting areas. So what I shared some ideas about this Mycelia thing on Forbes, and I got completely inundated from people going, I've got this new platform, I've got this new database that I'm doing over here, I'm an artist, how do I get onto Mycelia? And I'm just like, no, it's not a platform. It's just an idea, it's an architecture, basically, and a database, and a set of standards that we need to build. So what's happened is I don't want to personally create any, I don't want to personally make a platform. But I really am, as an artist, I want to be able to kind of jump into this new developments with, since 2007, blockchain, and just go, okay, here's a massively exciting opportunity. The reason why you're all in here is because, oh, what's this blockchain thing? I want to hear about it, or maybe you already know about it. But it's like, it's a hot topic. And it's a really amazing opportunity for me as an artist to go, okay, well, that's cool, but I want to get in there as an artist because I want to help shape how I would like the music industry to be and how I'd like it to work better for me. So that's kind of why I'm here. So this Mycelia Foundation is really interested in basically setting these ethical, technological and commercial standards. And we have an event on the 9th of February, which is basically kind of a bit more fleshed out version of, and a bit more succinct because I'll have an actual talk ready, on the 9th of February at Sonos Studios. And then there's a hack weekend in London at Sonos Studios again, 1st, 2nd and 3rd of April. And there is going to be all kinds of people from people from Spotify, people from labels, and the Ministry of Sound are going to come down. We've got Monthly Indian are going to be there. We've got, I think, 7 Digital are coming down. Basically, loads of people are coming. They're just really like curious and interested. How can we build this thing? Because we all love and listen, and music is everywhere. It's so much of our lives. Why can't we make something which is beautiful and fair and enable people to really be creative with our content instead of kind of going, oh, you can't do that and you can't do that, but actually go, here's all the things you can do. You don't even need to ask me. It's just here, all the information, and now just go and help us build these amazing services and everybody interconnect and stop creating little islands of like me, and these are my set terms and conditions, and nobody else is allowed to see any of that information. But if everybody was open, it was really semantic, all this information was connected and hashed together, we could search in the most amazing, incredible ways, and you could look through music, you could look through the journey of music in just really exciting and brilliant and lots of, anyway. So there you go, that's kind of what I was talking about. This idea of, this basically a gathering of minds to come together, technologists, thinkers, music industry, everybody, just come on that weekend, and we'll just hash some stuff together. Because we've got people from Ethereum coming down, who really are leading in this in blockchain stuff, and just have a look at, come and see what these smart contracts, how do they work, and just kind of come in and have a little see. And people are already like developing like amazing. Okay, so there's this company called many companies. But one of them is called Weave, and they're interested in getting stems. So that's another thing I put up online, is the stems, and you can hear those on Music as well. So people can like mix them. But then derivative works, obviously, that's kind of another question with how do we kind of organise that? Well, that was sort of good. So yeah, basically come, because nothing gets done until we do it, and so we just need to do it together. And Benji's been a huge part of this. And what's interesting is that, so I'm coming at it from kind of like, no, wouldn't it be nice from an artist's perspective? And Benji's coming at it from, Pledge, and everyone's also an artist, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's also got business that's very good in mind. And then we've also got, people from labels coming in and going, how can we solve our issues with the fact that, it's kind of complicated and complex, and everyone's having a go at us because they can't see where the payments, and everyone wants to audit us. And then you have like managers and just everybody coming together, because it's not about like a small group of people going, this is what it's going to be. It's about lots of people from all angles, and that's what's going to happen a little bit in at this event. And then what's really important is how to then make sure that it doesn't just stop there, but opening it up so that information that stuff that we work on is then available to you, for instance, at Music Tech Fest, because you've got your own kind of hack thing going on there, haven't you?
I'm showing up wherever they send me,
Which is very exciting. So how can we make that available for you then to work on that? So that we're not creating lots of little islands, basically, of people doing their own solutions, but we all need to get together and create it together.